Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning if you're in North America. Daryl Ullman and Alexander, or Alex as everybody knows him by, SAMexpert Q&A time Wednesday afternoon. I think we've got a good cadence going. Those of you that have been on our previous calls, hopefully that you're coming back and it's already semi-automatic. So you're just joining and tuning in to our Q&A channel on Wednesday afternoons to learn more about Microsoft licensing, updates, what's happening, economic impacts, and so on and so on. I don't think that there's any need to introduce us, SAMexpert. And if you don't know us, go straight to our website, or if you're on our YouTube channel, I'm sure that you can catch up very quickly what we do and who we are. So I don't
Yeah,
want to
all
take
good.
up too much time about introductions. Yeah, thank you. We've got our Q&A. So as always, we've got questions that came in from our audience. So we pre-prepared a number of questions that everybody or most people are interested in. But please use the chat, put in your ad hoc questions, anything that you are concerned about. We are going to focus today on SQL Server. It's January, so first of all, Happy New Year's, and we've got a full year coming. Exciting stuff in the Microsoft arena. Not many changes for January. Well, that's usually Microsoft's cadence. January is quiet, so we decided to focus on SQL Server as there is a huge impact for anything that you're going to be doing in the next 12 months. And I don't want to waste any more time. So, Alex, you want to just say hello and then we'll dive in? I'm going to be your
Yeah,
moderator as usual. Um, so, yeah, Alex, please.
yeah. Hi, everybody. Yeah, so thanks, Daryl, for the introduction. Interestingly, I have announced this line um, in a Telegram group to software asset management, and people have actually asked a couple of questions in the chat that Daryl you haven't seen yet. So I'm going to send them to you as you are moderating this
Yeah,
session.
please.
And I also invited them to join us, kind of ask this live, and let's discuss it live. Very good questions. I think we'll spend like 5 or 10 minutes answering each of those. Yeah. So. Shall we begin with the January update? Because it's January. Happy New Year, everybody. Uh, so I opened the Microsoft product terms website, where at least all the updates, rather sometimes per month, sometimes a little bit more often. Normally, they publish new updates on the first day of the month. And as you may notice here, I don't know if you went there yourselves and you checked it. Uh, it's boring. So January brought nothing interesting economically. Obviously, there are 4 updates you may notice, but those are mostly privacy and security terms, renaming of the product. Some products have been decommissioned, which are tiny things like add-ons to Microsoft Defender or something like it. So really boring. But what's not boring is we still get lots of questions about SQL Server, which happened in which was released, the new version released in December. And if you watched our previous update, you may have noticed that the changes are massive and they economically impact clients. And that's what we do. We look at economics, and then also the October updates for Windows Server per VM. We're still getting questions about those, and there are lots of things that are still unclear, and something is still unclear. We'll tell you when it's still unclear, and some considerations why we think certain things should be avoided for the time being. So yeah, Daryl, I think I'll just close this because there's really
Yeah,
nothing
there's
to
not
show.
much to talk about. There's not much to
And let
talk about. So as you said, Alex, let's talk about SQL Server. And I want to start off really, if I may, very high level on an economic view of SQL Server changes. So one of the main concerns that I've been hearing is that how are these changes that have come into place going to affect our 2023 budget? First question.
for the most of the clients, I say most of the that's a big that, by the way, statement I'm making. I would say just above half of the clients notice the changes in 2023, especially those who are on long-term agreements like EA, and they majorly buy SQL Server licenses through an enterprise agreement. Because the biggest economically, the biggest change that Microsoft in SQL Server 2023 is now, sorry, 2022, that now to license SQL Server per machine, it requires active software assurance. So if you who purchase all the SQL licenses, no legacy license, every license is purchased through an enterprise agreement, you obviously have a compulsory software assurance and nothing changes for you. There's absolutely nothing there. But clients that use legacy licenses and use very kind of nitty gritty tweaking of every single license in every single department and branch, and may use SQL Server licensing per virtual machine, um, legacy licenses, they're now stuck because they cannot upgrade to 2022, SQL Server 2022. And if they want to upgrade SQL Server 22, basically they will have to repurchase the licenses with software assurance. So if previously, for those specific configurations where they could reduce the costs and even have purely CapEx licenses, one of the perpetual licenses, they can't do this any longer. And they need to switch to some sort of an OpEx model, either software assurance or subscription licenses. And that's obviously, with the coming years, the total cost of those instances will grow, sometimes double.
So Alex, I've got a couple of follow-up questions to that statement. So I understand that if I'm an enterprise agreement customer, my pricing is set, I've got software assurance, there's going to be no impact.
Mm-hmm.
What about if I'm a CSP customer, or if I host my SQL servers in Azure? Is there any kind of impact?
Right. If you're a CSP customer, in CSP, there are two types of licenses. The perpetual licenses, which have no software assurance equivalency, no subscription. It's payment. Those licenses, if they are currently assigned to SQL Server virtual machines and say like single host configurations, I'm going to be technical, but I need to explain that. That is absolutely fine, as long as you stay on that edition that is licensed to previous edition. If you want to upgrade to 2022, you will have to switch to OpEx. You will have to switch to subscription. So there's no way now to upgrade and buy another perpetual license, because that's just not going to work in that configuration when SQL is licensed per virtual machine. So that's how it impacts CSPs. Again, if you're static, if you're changing nothing, but then what Microsoft does recently is Microsoft is reducing the time frame of support of versions. How long will SQL 2019 remain in support for? That's the question, especially with Microsoft reducing that. Say comes 2020, that's something I haven't checked. I didn't have time to do today. Comes next year and Microsoft says, you know what, we stop supporting it. We're releasing any more security updates. Many companies will be compelled to switch to a new version. And by switching to a new version, they will have to review the entire SQL Server licensing strategy. I'm not saying there are no workarounds at all, but the costs will grow.
But what about actual pricing? Sorry, Alex. What about actual pricing? Has pricing changed? Has SQL pricing increased?
By 10%.
By 10%. So just say I'm a CSP customer and I'm on a monthly model. Will my pricing increase as a new price list comes out, or have I got any kind of price protection?
Monthly, immediately.
So if I'm on a monthly, so I want to just repeat that because this is important. So if I'm on a monthly program, my monthly cost will increase by an average, depending on whatever terms and conditions you have with your reseller, by 10%. So that's going to impact me immediately.
Yes, on subscriptions.
Okay.
Exactly.
So that's a big difference compared to an EA that you are on a 3-year contract and your pricing is locked in for the entire duration of the contract. So that's another big benefit of an enterprise agreement compared to a CSP that's either monthly or it could be a yearly. That means depend when your year is going to end, you're going to be impacted sometime in 2023.
An interesting note, by the way, because I had this argument recently, but CSP also has 3-year subscriptions where you essentially you lock in the price.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the benefit of an EA to that, because when you subscribe in CSP for 3 years, you get a 15% discount compared
Yeah.
to annual prices, but there's no reduction. So you actually commit for 3 years, and it's as far as I remember, it's one off still on 3-year commitments. It's not even a commitment; it's one lump sum for 3 years upfront. So there you go. No spread payments, which still exist in EA, and no ability to reduce, because enterprise subscription, which is a 3-year contract, if it's a subscription, is actually 3 annual subscriptions, which you can right size every year. So EA is still more flexible, but annual subscriptions in CSP, they also lock the price in for a year, but
For
then
a year only. That
it's
means
just one
sometime in
year.
2023, you're going to see a
Yeah,
10% increase. So it's going to
yeah.
impact you. And then the second part of the question was, is there any impact on Azure or Azure pricing or license or something changing there?
So licensing, interestingly, introduced positive change.
Okay.
So as quick intro for those who don't know, in Azure, you can either pay as you go for what you purchase from Azure directly, or you can bring your own licenses. Before, you could get so-called passive instances, disaster recovery, high availability. If you don't know what that is, don't overthink this right now. Just talk to your IT if you're purely from procurement. But passive instances didn't require licenses if you brought your own licenses to Azure. If you procured Azure instances or virtual machines through pay as you go, you had to pay for passive instances. From December, Microsoft finally said, "Fine, we are aligning Azure terms with on-premises terms." What does it mean? If I have an active SQL Server that serves my workers with data, financial, retail, whatever, and there's a standby secondary instance or secondary virtual machine in Azure again, I own compute costs, storage costs, and what, but not for the SQL Server license, which will read in Azure. So that
That's
change
a big
will
benefit,
impact.
actually. That's actually a good benefit.
It's a
That's
benefit.
very positive.
It is a good
Okay.
benefit. It was a positive benefit. Well, there's another positive benefit of changes in December, which again, the thing is it a benefit? Yes. How many companies will that impact? Below 5% organizations. Because what Microsoft did is, when you license now virtual machines per virtual machine, SQL Server, containers inside those virtual machines are unlimited. Previously, you had to count them as separate virtual machines, which was completely ridiculous. Great change. How many companies do use containers inside virtual machines? That's my
But
question.
maybe now, with that
No.
new benefit of unlimited containers, there's an opportunity for cost reduction and maybe optimization of how you use containers within SQL. And if you are aware of this new benefit as a DBA or I don't know, licensing manager in your organization, this is something that you should look into, because potentially there could be some substantial savings going forward.
We actually published an article I think it was this week or last week, I don't remember exactly, where we refreshed our SQL Server. Let me share my screen. We refreshed our SQL Server cost reduction optimization, and look at the consolidation and containers. There are lots of considerations. It's a very long, actually quite a long article. And this is what we do, how we optimize licensing. So go to SAMexpert.com, go to the blog, to the articles, and you find it there. So under the SQL Server tag.
So if we continue on that
Yeah,
line, Alex, of cost optimization and potentially some new benefits, there has been a new licensing model for on-premise use of SQL Server, something similar
yes.
to Azure Pay as you go, based on usage. Can you just elaborate a bit on that?
So yes. So I'm not ready to discuss it in detail because that's
But let's stay at
something that
high level. Let's
our
just stay at high level. What's the concept?
high level
The new
now.
concept introduced.
Now you yeah, that's the concept. Now you can deploy SQL Server on premises, and with the connector that is called Azure Arc, ARC,
ARC.
connected to Azure, and have it on a pay-as-you-go model. So if you only want to use it like for a few minutes a month, that's what you're going to pay, a few minutes a month. But it must be always connected to Azure so I can track that usage because that's how you build. Mind-boggling, basically. This time, Microsoft
Correct.
is allowing you to pay for something per the actual usage time on premises. The only thing is what we are not yet ready to discuss is our head of cloud economics, he's looking into it. I asked him to look into that, do some calculations, and we will either release a video discussing those things, or maybe bring him into one of our Wednesday live events, and he'll just explain it to you in more details. But that is something also which is a potential cost optimization, especially for those SQL Server instances you have seasonal needs in using them, for example, or you only need to use it one day a week. You consolidate something, some sort of batching jobs.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here, Alex. I've got a follow-up question that just comes to mind. If we're looking at pay as you go for on-premise use connected to Azure, so basically shifting the model from pay as you go subscription type pay per usage that's only been available on the cloud, now it's coming to on-premise licensing. A very interesting concept, by the way. Do you think that we're going to be seeing more of that for other products as well? Is this going to be maybe the new future of licensing, of server licensing, or maybe even a desktop licensing from Microsoft?
More probably than not.
Okay.
What people need to know about Microsoft is that there's no centralized line department. So people who are responsible for developing and selling SQL Server dictate the rules for SQL. People who are responsible for Windows 10 dictate the rules for Windows 10. And there's like a team that consolidates all that and tries to argue with all those teams to kind of harmonize all these licensing programs. But if something happens to SQL, it's not necessarily going to be reflected in other programs. Again, I think if this proof of concept, Microsoft may potentially review such a possibility. And it will again reduce the licensing portfolio and convert software more into the consumption model, and that's ultimately where they want to be. At least that's what the market is thinking. That's where they're moving, aren't they?
So Alex, we've got a question. I just want to touch not on all of them, but we've got a question regarding certification, and I know that. Well, I know that I'm part of the team. We're doing a lot with SAMexpert Academy. Do you want to maybe just say a few words about certification, about the academy, what's happening? Yeah, please. For those of our audience that are not acquainted with that.
So we actually we branched out. We were deliberating this for 2 years whether we want to do specific training business in SAMexpert, or we want to kind of keep it just free of charge on YouTube and our free of charge certification that we do every January. And by the way, the new certification will start in a week or two. Sorry for the delay. The reason for the delay is that we need to review all the questions because of what Microsoft changed in October and December. So big changes. We need to actually go through each of the almost like 600 questions and check that they're still up to date, and maybe delete some nonsensical questions, because I think some of the questions just lost the um, uh,
Relevance. Yeah.
importance, relevance. Yes. So we have deployed a new platform, SAMexpert Academy, just purely for that. So let me put it on screen, to which we are gradually transitioning all the information from the SAMexpert.com that is only related to training and certification. So we split our consulting business from training business.
But let's just be really clear. We're not touching our YouTube channel, so everything there is
Nah.
still free. We're going to continue to publish to YouTube, so I don't want there to be any kind of misunderstanding. The academy is going to be really well structured modules of licensing of various subjects, where on the YouTube channel we basically post what we think, and we share our knowledge. Here it's going to be very, very structured. So that's a big difference, and it's really self-service. So and you'll see more and more training modules coming up over the next 12 months.
So whatever we do on YouTube since 2021 gets into this Microsoft licensing and license management free training in a structured manner. So there's, if I don't want to go inside the library right now, I don't want to kind of disclose all the details what's going on behind the scene. But if you want to see all the videos in one place, you can either do that on YouTube, or now go to the SAMexpert Academy, register, get access to this section for free. Also join the community, and then we can kind of start asking questions and discuss it more convenient way than purely on YouTube. It's now centralized. In addition, we're going to add commercial courses that we have never planned to publish on. So as Daryl just said, whatever we do on YouTube, every month there's going to be new training module. How, by the way, an interesting point, how are we going to decide what we're going to present is you decide that. So on our LinkedIn page and on our YouTube community page, on the YouTube channel, and maybe here on the community as well, we publish on a monthly basis, we publish a poll asking you, we give us of what you want to hear in the next training. And for example, SQL Server for December was voted by you. Azure licensing for January was voted by you. So guys and girls, please vote. You choose what's going to be the next training module, and there are only 12 pages here. So choose. And
Alex,
that will continue.
Alex, we don't have.
Let's go back
yeah,
to
exactly. We have 6 minutes, and we still got a couple of questions licensing related. So I don't know if you're going to get to all the other questions, but let's stay to licensing, because there are some interesting topics that we've been asked to cover. So one question that
just one thing, gents, please, and girls, join the mailing list. So go to our starting website, SAMexpert.com, to the training page, and there are all the instructions about the training. Mailing list, and that mailing will update you. We're only going to invite the members of that mailing list to the exam. So it's a very, very important mailing list. All the instructions are on this page. Now let's go back to the licensing question.
Okay, thanks, Alex, for that clarification. So one of the questions, again, going back to SQL Server licensing, is about test and dev versions and deployments. And maybe you can just tell us a bit about changes to SQL Server test and dev, and what are the rights via Visual Studio compared to maybe commercial licensing?
I always advise you to listen carefully when I respond to those questions, and please listen carefully because it's a minefield. The basics. Visual Studio Professional subscription, which is the cheapest Visual Studio optional subscription that you get, includes Windows Server and SQL Server as products that you may install in unlimited instances and use them for test, development, demonstration, non-production. The Visual Studio stuff, the development and testing stuff. So through that Visual Studio subscription, as far as I remember, and I think I'm up to date, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm up to date. this is certain. You get both enterprise edition of SQL Server. So you can do that. Here's the problem. If you, for example, you have 5 developers and a team of IT people, that is 200. And that development sandbox where those 5 developers work, and they deploy the 100 service and test and dev, whatever they do. If that is supported by the same IT team, if you're using software from the Visual Studio subscription, then the entire IT team of 200 people requires the same subscriptions. See what the problem is?
What, a Visual Studio license? That's what you mean?
Yeah. So basically, anyone who touches, somehow supports, backs up, configures, monitors with a CCM, non-production workloads, every admin requires a similar MSDN license per user. So that's why. Okay, you get, to answer your question, you get both standard and enterprise. But for purely SQL Server development, we advise every time deploy SQL Server Developer Edition.
It's still
It's
out
a
there,
technical equivalent
Alex.
of enterprise.
It's still available. It's been
Yes,
available for
and
years.
it's free.
Okay.
It's free. It's
And it's the
completely
latest
free.
version.
It used to cost $50 per user per year, and then in 2010, 2020, I think it was like 2015, Microsoft made it free. So, well, come on.
And then basically, I just want to touch on this because I've seen this go very, very wrong with organizations.
Sorry, just Samir had probably corrected me. So I have a customer Visual Studio Test Pro with MSDN. Let's say customer on the Visual Studio Test Pro, the MSDN is missing.
Yeah, but let's take this offline.
This is not what we can help
No.
with.
This is not what we're talking about.
They need to go to the reseller.
You need to go to the reseller and get an answer. Alex, sorry, I want to just go back because we've got a few minutes, and this is an important topic. So just say I install SQL Server Enterprise Edition for test and dev, standard commercial license. But I intended that only for development issues or development environments. And that's what I'm doing actually. Am I in the wrong? Do I have to buy an enterprise edition?
No, actually, if you install, it all depends on the license. If the license is a standard enterprise commercial license through EA, you can do whatever you want with it.
But I have to pay for an enterprise license, even though I'm using it only for development purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. If you use an enterprise license, the alternative is to buy Visual Studio subscription, and the other alternative is, as I said, install SQL Server Developer, which is
I've
free.
got 2 alternatives that are the correct alternatives, either free development edition that gives me the same capabilities as a commercial enterprise edition or standard edition, or through Visual Studio. Both are the correct way to go if I'm not using it for production usage.
Yes.
Keep it simple. Don't mix and match. And what if I'm being smart and I'm using my production environment and I'm installing both development and enterprise licenses and I'm mixing them and everybody has access to everything? Am I in for any kind of trouble, or should I separate the environments? What's your best practice?
Firstly, separate it. Separate it to avoid questions.
Okay.
However, it's a very difficult topic. We have a video in about a year ago or year and a half ago where I talk you through whether you can mix production and non-production virtual machines without affecting the licensing. So please watch it. So it's a 30-minute long subject to actually discuss that. Short question is if you isolate production into specific virtual machines, it is actually allowed to mix them with non-production virtual machines. But at no time should you mix production non-production in the same virtual machine or a system. I would simplify this, whether physical or virtual. Don't. So I'd like to take Thomas's question, by the way,
Alex,
about Windows Server.
Alex, let's wrap up with one more question, please, and keep to the time. So please take that question, then we're going to wrap up for today and take whatever we can offline.
Thomas asked me on Telegram, on our Telegram channel, Windows Server new per VM license mix, licensing per VM, and old legacy licenses on the same host. So I would say I would avoid that. I think the opinion that we have is yes, but there are no clarifications from Microsoft. So what we've hit recently as a very as a massive in the lower back is that Microsoft has started really enforcing the rule that you may only license, even when you use license stacking, so-called license stacking for Windows Server on the same host, you must use the same edition and the same version. So, for example, if you deploy a new virtual machine with a new version, you need to relicense the entire host, even if you're using Windows Server standard licenses. That sort of mixing and matching, allowing. There's no reasonable explanation to that. They do this. However, the opinion that we had this discussion about a month ago in London with resellers. The opinion that we have right now is that as long as for the legacy licenses that rule is met, so or all the instances that are licensed in the old way are licensed with the same version and edition, nothing stops you to also add virtual machines licensed per VM. But what if Microsoft decides to say at some point to say you actually can't do that? You will have to re-architect the entire IT. So I would be very, very, very cautious about that. And we cannot guarantee as an independent entity that any advice that we give right now about that will be exactly how Microsoft is going to see this.
So Alex,
So
Alex,
yeah.
I'm going to cut you off and say thank you for that. We are over our time today, and we like keeping to the time. We've got a few questions here, so please, whoever we didn't manage to get to your question, send us a question in ask@samexpert.com, or just go to our website and post your question directly to us. We promise you that we'll provide you with an answer. Alex, any last words before we?
Well, thank you for joining us
Yeah.
today. It's been a pretty interactive session, which I I was worried about January, slow month. The question about 3-year subscription discounts offline, and please come back to me. Send an email to ask@SAMexpert.com and we'll review that. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised what you're saying. I'd like to see it myself. Okay, so again, thanks very much, and we'll see you next Wednesday. So what do we have next Wednesday? Very quickly, is it that's a service provider Q&A. But if you're not a service provider, if you're a client of a service provider or any hosting platform, please also come and ask your questions, because we're going to be talking about bringing your own licenses and maintaining what we call right now, it's almost like our copyright is software investment continuity. So yeah, please join us
So
next
stay
Wednesday.
tuned for next week. Same time, same place. And Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you for having you. And we've got an exciting year ahead of us. Thank you. Thank you, Alex, for your time.
Yes,
Bye.
thanks. Bye, everybody. Thank you.